Good evening. On behalf of Eco Canada, welcome back to our Eco Canada Tutti a Tavola online cooking experiences. This year, Tutti a Tavola is promoted and financed by the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, carried out by Assocamere Estero in collaboration with the Italian Chambers of Commerce abroad to strengthen and to protect the authentic Italian products. Tonight's special Father's Day class will feature a sparkling aperitivo and a super tasty Papà burger, all authentically Italian. As always, we've here with us Roberto Fracchioni, executive chef for over 20 years, professor and business consultant for restaurateurs and the hospitality industry. Roberto has been working with Eco Canada since 2017 for the promotion of authentic Italian cuisine in Ontario, and we thank him for his commitment and continued collaboration. With him tonight, we are happy to welcome Julie Miguel, a digital content producer specialized in food media and an active food blogger. Julie's food media career began after she placed seventh on the inaugural season of CTV's MasterChef Canada. Since then, she started her blog and has made numerous appearances on CTV Your Morning, The Marilyn Dennis Show, Fridge Wars, and other national and local television channels. Julie continues to make regular appearances as a culinary expert on Cityline, as well as hosting live cooking segments. Thank you so much, Julie, for joining us. And of course, a very special thank you goes to DeLonghi, our sponsor for tonight. DeLonghi, based in Treviso, Italy, is a global leader in espresso machines, kitchen appliances, and home comfort products. Innovation, quality, and award-winning design are some of the core values of the DeLonghi brand. Present in over 123 countries, DeLonghi is committed to creating innovations that elevate consumers every day and transform home experiences into moments to be relished. Tonight, we're so happy to announce that one lucky participant will have the chance to win an amazing DeLonghi coffee machine right in time for Father's Day. And further details you will hear during the class. So thank you again to our ECO member, DeLonghi, for this generous giveaway. Last week's, by the way, the giveaway that we assigned was won by Barbara from Burlington. Remember next week to join us for the Great Italian Wines session on June 24th. Tutti a Tavola will be back on June 29 with another great class sponsored by DeLonghi. On the occasion of our 60th anniversary, become a member of the Chamber at a special entry level of $200. And finally, don't forget to order our authentic Italian dishes at Aria, Buono, Cibo, Locale, Oretta, and Terroni restaurants until June 20th. At this point, I would like to leave the stage to Julie Miguel and Chef Roberto Fracchioni to guide us through this exciting evening. Welcome, Julie. It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight. Who did you bring with you?
Thank you, Tiziana. I'm here with my father, Eric.
There you go. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to our Tutti a Tavola. How is everything? Let's celebrate a few days in advance Father's Day. And so I leave the stage with you. You let us know. Tell us about what you're gonna do for us, and welcome to your father, of course, Eric.
So this is my father, Eric, and he's actually from Cosenza, Italy. Cosenza, Calabria, which is in the southern part of Italy. And yeah, so he's here today to be part of the event. So thank you, Dad, for being here. And thank you, Tiziana, for that wonderful introduction. So today, make sure you stay until the end of the event because there's going to be a secret word. So listen up for it. And you'll have a chance to win that DeLonghi, that beautiful DeLonghi espresso maker. So when you hear the keyword, look in the chat and you'll see an email address there. And what you're going to do is email the secret word to that email address in the chat, and you have a chance to win this beautiful machine. So now we're going to start the event with an aperitivo. So I have it back here. We're going to be actually making an Aperol Spritz. I'm going to make one for me and my. So the recipe, first first, it's a half an ounce of Campari. So this is Campari. It's a bitter. This is one of my favorite cocktails. So delicious. I usually make it in a wine glass. Just get the glasses here. So you're gonna need half an ounce of Campari. So I'll just do that in here. And then next you're gonna need Aperol. And this is what Aperol looks like. Another bitter. So you can see it there. Another beautiful color. So half an ounce of that. Into the glass. And then we have Prosecco here. So this is some Prosecco. And this I'm going to be, you technically should be putting 2 to 3 ounces, but I'm just going to top up the glasses with these. And then we'll add some ice.
Okay, that's good.
That's good for you. And you can even add, top it up with some soda if you want to. So I have some soda here. I'm actually using tonic today. I love the bitterness of this cocktail. It's really, really good. And it's refreshing. Pour that in with some ice. There we go. And traditionally, you top it with a garnish of an orange slice. Those are the flavors that are in the drink. Just do like that. And I'm going to propose a toast to my dad for Father's Day. So toast to my father, Eric, for all that he does for me and my family. And then also I'm going to be just a big thank you to all fathers and father figures on this Father's Day. So happy Father's Day. Cheers.
Cheers.
What do you think?
Excellent.
Very good. So next, we're going to be making a Papà burger, which is going to go fantastic with this cocktail. So Chef Roberto is already prepping. So Chef, what kind of burger are you going to be making for us today?
I don't want to cook now after I try this Aperol Spritz. What are you doing to me, Julie? So yeah, we're doing a Papà burger. So Father's Day is always tough. You want to cook something nice for your father, your husband, whatever it is. But the grill is always sort of like, the man's world. So it's always the dad usually who loves to cook on the grill. So we're going to show you all how to give him a night off, cook him something on the grill that is delicious. And it's just basically a hamburger, but done in an Italian sort of way.
Some very special products in this burger. So tell us the special Italian products that you're going to be using here.
Well, it all starts with our meat. So our meat is beef, pork, and veal. Basically, it's sort of modeled after a meatball. It's basically a meatball just in a hockey puck shape as opposed to a round shape.
I always thought when I'm making burgers, I thought this is like exactly like a meatball. So like you could just squish it and make a hamburger with it.
They're all the same when you think about it. A meatball, a hamburger, meatloaf, the bases are all the same.
Right.
It's just a matter of how you flavor it, how you season it, that makes it, a little bit different. So we start off with our 3 kinds of meat, our beef, our pork, and our veal. And I'm just going to make one here because, I don't want to sit here all day having people watch me make hamburgers. So equal parts beef, pork, and veal. Now, I don't get too hung up on super lean meat. In fact, it works a lot better if it has a little bit of fat in it. So you can see the pork does have a nice bit of fat marbling to it. The beef has a nice bit of marbling to it. That's what we want to see. We want to see some fat. That's flavor country.
And why the mixture of the meats? Why the three different, the pork, the veal, and the beef?
It has to do with texture more than anything, because beef on its own tends to be, a little bit tough. It can be a really hard kind of burger, which is not ideal. I mean, I don't like that, so I like having softer burgers. The veal helps mellow it out, make it a little bit softer, and the pork just adds another layer of flavor as well. So it's about texture, the density of the hamburger, but also the overall flavor profile of the hamburger.
Okay.
Okay.
So after the meat, how do you mix all these meats together? Do you do it with your hands?
Did you see that? I was trying to sneak in a quick Spritz.
I'm gonna make you one after. Where did Chef go? We lost him.
I forgot one ingredient.
Oh, okay.
I forgot the most important ingredient in the fridge.
What's that?
Ricotta cheese.
Ah. And
So,
what does ricotta do for this burger?
same thing. It adds flavor because there's a little bit of fat to it, but it also makes the burger nice and tender, which is super, super, super important for me anyway. I don't like wrestling with a hamburger, trying to chew it out of the bun. I don't like that. So basically, we take our ricotta and I strain it overnight. So I just put it in a little colander like this, wrap it with a piece of saran wrap, and then just put it over top of a small dish. And you can see how much water came out. There's probably just easily a good tablespoon of water that comes out of the ricotta. Now, you don't have to do this step, but it helps because you don't want too much moisture in your hamburger or your meatballs for that matter, because then you just have to add more breadcrumbs, and breadcrumbs makes it, again, more dense. So
Right.
we just want to keep it
more dry.
Yeah. So the ricotta goes in. Now, we do add a little bit of breadcrumbs. Now, it's necessary because it helps absorb the fat that's coming off of the meat. And you don't want to lose the fat because that's delicious. That's awesome. So we want to keep as much of that fat in our meat as possible. So a little sprinkle of breadcrumbs, not too much. Like, if you follow the recipe, it's perfect, tried and tested. A little bit of very finely diced garlic. So we put our garlic in, and then a mixture of dried herbs. So with the herbs, I always start with oregano, a little heavy on the oregano as well, rosemary, basil, and some fennel seeds. And this is important. Even if you don't like fennel, throw a little bit of fennel seeds into your hamburgers. It's sort of the basis of most of the best salumi that are made in Italy is fennel.
True.
So, yeah, you don't want it like overpowering by any means. You don't want a fennel burger. You don't want a fennel burger, but you want, some fennel in there.
That's a great idea because I've never added that flavor, but I love salumi and like that would make it taste just like that.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's something that people don't realize until you tell them that most salumis are made with fennel, or some of the best ones. And then once they think about it, they're like, oh yeah, I do remember, tasting a little bit of fennel. But once it goes in, you just need a quick little stir. Now, I'm not going to salt and I'm not going to season this with salt and pepper. It doesn't need it because we're going to season it when we go to cook it. And if you add salt and pepper now, it'll extract water from the meat. It'll start to extract some liquid from the meat.
That's true. That actually happens when I always salt before, and then you end up like more water ends up coming off.
Yeah, I mean that's what water does. It's the whole basis of curing meat. You put the salt on top of a piece of prosciutto, and it extracts the water and cooks the meat. So we're not going to be hanging this in the fridge for 9 months, but we're going to leave it in our fridge for a few hours at least 3 hours. It needs for the herbs to sort of soften, for all the flavors to coalesce, to come together, especially the oregano. Oregano can be really bitter when it's especially dried oregano. So if it has time to sit with the meat, the flavor gets very, very soft.
And what about fresh herbs?
So with this recipe, I actually find that dried herbs works better. Again, because you're trying to control the amount of moisture that goes into the hamburger. So with fresh herbs, I mean, I'm surrounded by fresh herbs. I could easily pick all of these herbs and put it in here fresh. But the flavor of like a piece of cooked basil, if it's on the surface of the hamburger and that hits the grill, it'll burn the basil. So you'll get this little bit of burnt basil flavor. It won't be noticeable. Like you won't eat it and say, "Oh, that tastes like burnt basil," but the overall flavor profile will be compromised.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And how about the garlic? Does the same thing happen to the raw garlic?
So the raw garlic, I mean, is pretty neutral. It goes in, and yeah, if it cooks on the outside, it has a tendency to burn a little bit, but that's all about the technique, the way in which we grill.
Okay.
So we're going to get to that in a second. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to form this into a patty, but I'm going to make it giant, okay? And this is one mistake, or not a mistake, but an oversight that many people make, is that they'll get a hamburger bun that's 4 inches in diameter, and they'll make their beef patty 4 inches in diameter. And by the time it finished cooking, it's shrunk down by 25%, and it's tiny, and it doesn't look really good on your bun. So when we make our hamburger, we make it giant. Make it much, much, much bigger than your bun, like a good 2 inches bigger than your bun. And another thing that I like to do is I like to make a divot in the middle of the hamburger. So it kind of looks like a bowl. That's because during the cooking process, the center of the hamburger will sort of puff up. And you end up with these dome-shaped hamburgers.
Ah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Whenever I cook hamburgers, I'm so embarrassed because they shrink so much and then the buns are always enormous.
Yeah, exactly. So you start off with a giant hamburger. That's the first step. The second step is, again, making a nice little divot so that as it contracts, I mean, that's just a product of protein. All proteins, when you apply heat to them, they contract. All the fibers contract. It's what they do. You can't really stop it. So what we want to do is try and control it. So what we're going to do is, like I said, make it big. So as it shrinks, it'll fit your bun. Make the divot so it has a place to, as it comes into the middle, it'll puff up in the middle. And we're going to cook it properly, which is slow. So this is one thing that a lot of people make mistakes with. When they get their barbecues, they turn them on super high, and they try and cook everything on high heat.
I cook like way up high, and I feel like I need to sear everything right away, or else it looks like gray meat. So my thing is to always sear it as soon as I get it on the grill.
Well, searing is a great idea as long as you understand what the whole concept of searing. Now, searing for a lot of people means super high heat, put your meat on, let it get black and burnt from the grills. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for, it's called the Maillard effect, and it's a term that's used in all forms of cooking, especially large food production, especially coffee as well. Coffee with the Maillard effect is integral in roasting a coffee bean properly. And what it is cooking at a lower temperature than searing, what most people think searing is, and having very little moisture. The less moisture, the more what it is your amino acids get converted through heat. So if there's too much water, then your amino acids won't get converted, and you won't get that browning. It's not black; it should be brown. Okay. That's the true Maillard effect, and that's what gives you a nice barbecue grilled sort of flavor. If it's too hot, you're just doing controlled burns. This shouldn't be that hot.
Basically, I've been cooking my hamburgers wrong all this time.
Honestly, it's not just you, Julie. Most people, I blame the barbecue manufacturers because they make barbecues with 19 gajillion BTUs that you don't need. You don't need a barbecue to get that hot. You never need I rarely do I ever cook anything with my 4 burners all on high. Rarely. When I buy a barbecue, I don't care how hot it is. I care how cold it is. I care how low I can get it so that if I want to do like my turkeys, I don't do turkeys in the oven. I do my turkeys on the barbecue.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
want it down at like 200 degrees. Same with my roasts. I do everything on my barbecue. So I'm more concerned that the barbecue can get down to 200 degrees and hold a constant 200 degrees than whether it can get up to 900 degrees in 5 seconds.
That's true, yeah, because mine it jumps. Like as soon as the lid is closed and I kind of walk away from it, I'll go back and it's at like 600 degrees.
Yeah, they're just very, very hot, more hotter than they need to be for sure.
Right.
So our
And
last ingredient before
there
I
was
start
a question here. What about adding coffee to your burger?
That's what I'm going to do. That's our last ingredient.
Oh, perfect.
That's our last. Oh, I forgot the egg too, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
See what happens? You give me a Aperol Spritz to start a class, and everything goes sideways. So we take an egg, and we crack our egg, and don't crack on the edge of the bowl, please, on the surface of your cutting board. I got into a lot of
the egg force. Is that going to bind everything together?
Yes, that helps keep everything together. I forgot about that step. Thank you. Kind of dawned on me as I was getting ready to cook this thing.
If you had cooked them without the egg, I'm sure they still would have been delicious.
They would have still stuck together. This is just sort of an insurance policy, an egg. A lot of times, especially when I'm doing meatballs, like actual proper meatballs, I don't put an egg in. If you have enough fat and your ratio of breadcrumbs to fat is right and you're cooking it properly, nice and slow and low, then you don't need the egg. But it's just an insurance policy, and this is live, so I thought I'd throw an egg in here just so that I don't make another boo-boo like I just did.
Okay.
Okay, so now we mold it again. And I don't work it too much. A lot of people will take their meat and like slap it between their hands too to get it super dense. Again, I don't like doing that. I like my burgers to be nice and soft and easy to eat. So that's the beauty of it. You forget an ingredient, you can just go and add it again and you're off to the races. So I make my little divot again. And now we're going to add our coffee. So what I like to do is I like to put the coffee on the outside of the hamburger. And the reason is it gets nice and toasted that way. You can mix it right in. There's no problem with mixing it right in. But I like it when it's on the outside because it gets super, super toasted and your hamburger smells like coffee when it's cooking. And nothing makes me more excited than the smell of coffee. So I'm very happy that DeLonghi jumped on board and is sponsoring this because we get to cook with coffee for the next couple of weeks.
That sounds delicious with the coffee. I never thought to do that.
It's awesome. I use coffee a lot when I cook. I'm a bit of a coffeeaholic. I drink way too much coffee. Seriously, it's crazy. So I like cooking with it as well. Now, when we cook with coffee, we have to remember one thing. We should treat it like a spice. So just like, I don't know, nutmeg or black pepper, fresh cracked black pepper is better than pre-ground pepper that's been sitting in a shaker for who knows how many months, absorbing odors in your kitchen. Okay. So grinding your coffee fresh is super, super important. There's a lot. I'm just going to use my little fancy DeLonghi coffee grinder. Did you hear me there?
Yeah, I could.
Okay, so a little DeLonghi coffee grinder. And I'm going to do a very coarse ground of coffee. Not too fine. You don't want like an espresso grind. Okay. So I have the dial set to as coarse as it possibly can, and I'll try and show you. It's quite big. Like there's still some pieces that are fairly large, and that's okay. If it's too fine, again, you're going to sort of invite burning of the coffee. So we put some on, and don't be afraid. A lot of people are nervous when they cook with coffee. They think it's going to overpower the dish. They think that it's going to be too strong, and all you're going to taste is coffee. But it's not as strong as you would think, especially when you're doing a very coarse grind like I did here today. It's not that crazy strong. So be generous with your coffee, especially if you do like coffee.
I can honestly say I have never tried a burger with coffee grinds on it. I have tried steak.
Yeah.
I've had a steak that's been kind of coated in coffee grounds, and it was really good. It wasn't what I expected.
No, I mean it's a great flavor. It really is, as long as you use it, with a little bit of prudence. You can't just add tons of coffee to anything, or else, of course, it's all going to taste like coffee. I treat coffee like I treat cardamom. Cardamom's a wonderful flavor, but very easy to overpower a dish.
Yes.
Coffee, you have to think about it that way too. Like I said, I'm using a lot on this hamburger because we have a lot of flavors going on this hamburger. But when I'm making a sauce or when I'm using it in a marinade, then yeah, I kind of pare it back a little bit. So I'll try and show everyone how much coffee is on there. It's a good amount.
How many ounces do you think that is? It looks enormous on the screen.
Well, I have tiny hands. So this hamburger is probably, that's a good 7-8 ounces.
Wow.
Come on.
It truly is a
Papa burger. Okay, so we're going to start cooking this now. So when it comes to cooking a hamburger, like I said, it's really important that we do it slowly, like slowly. Take it easy, relax, have a sip of your Campari or your Aperol Spritz, and turn your burners down.
So what's an idea?
What do I have it turned to? So, I mean, I know my barbecue very well. So it's running at about 350 degrees right now on the thermometer. But these things are, notoriously wrong. I have half of the barbecue set on, I'd say, about a quarter of its heat, a quarter of the dial. And then the other two are set almost on high, I'd say about 3/4. And the reason is we want to make a convection. So this side is cool and this side is hot. So then what happens is the hot air comes up, it fills this giant cavity, and then it circulates down. And it acts like a convection oven.
Okay, so it's like a.
But we don't want too high a heat right underneath it.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Very smart.
I've been cooking a while. I've grilled a few things in my life. But you don't want too much heat directly underneath it, or else you'll get those nasty flare-ups. It'll dry out your meat, which is the exact opposite of what we want.
Right.
So gentle, gentle, gentle heat. And I'm going to show everybody another little trick today.
Okay.
So, when it comes to grilling, now, like I said, I've been working, and this recipe is designed to make a delicate, tender hamburger. If we put it on the grill and you start getting flare-ups and you have to grab your little burger flipper and you're pushing it all over the barbecue and you're flipping it over and you're getting flare-ups and you're spraying water on it, please don't ever spray water on a barbecue. If you have a grease fire, if you have flames in your barbecue, it's because grease is burning. Water and grease do not mix. I don't know whoever started telling people to have a spray bottle of water, but don't do that. I've seen it go horribly wrong many times. But the more you agitate the hamburger, the more liquid you're forcing out of it. So every time you move it, you risk the moisture and you risk having it breaking apart. And again, like I said, we want this super tender. So what we're going to do is I made this hamburger on a piece of parchment paper.
Really?
Sitting on the parchment paper, I'm going to cook it on the parchment paper.
Doesn't parchment burn on the barbecue?
No.
Really?
This is the thing. I mean, if I do like a super delicate piece of fish, if I catch like a perfectly, small rainbow trout and I want to cook it on the grill, 99% of the times it's going to fall apart. So I put it right on a piece of parchment paper and cook it right on the parchment paper. The parchment paper will not ignite. Around the edges where like there's no contact with the meat or the fillet of fish or whatever you happen to be doing, around here it'll get dark. It might burn a little bit. Sometimes it happens, but if your temperature is low, it won't. And it definitely will not burn right where the meat is in contact with the parchment paper.
I'm totally trying that next time. That's
seriously, try it with any. It's great with a piece of fish because you put it on the barbecue and then you don't have to rotate it to get the nice hash marks. You just rotate the parchment paper. right
Okay.
on the grill. So that's what I'm going to show you now. So I hope my camera doesn't cut out from high heat, but
We can see
we're
you.
going to take it and we're going to put it right on with our parchment paper, and we're going to let it cook. And it does take some time, so you do need to be patient. At the same time, we're going to start grilling some of our other ingredients. So another ingredient that I'm using, something that I love to cook with, is a little zucchini. And what we're doing with this hamburger, my idea is to sort of have meat and veg and starch all together. So you don't have to, wrestle with the salad on the side. So there's going to be some nice vegetable elements to the actual hamburger. So a little piece of zucchini, we just cut it into thin strips, and then we're going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil on top of it and a little salt and pepper, and we're going to start grilling this again. Now, with the zucchini, you can be a little bit more, I'd say, aggressive with your heat. You can use a little bit more heat. It's not going to ruin it, but we still want to follow the same principles of moving it as little as possible, rotating it so we get the nice hash marks, and just being, overall delicate with our zucchini. Another ingredient to make it a little bit more Italian, sorry, I have to keep stuff in a cooler or else it's going to melt out here, is one of our featured ingredients tonight, a little bit of prosciutto di Parma.
Ooh.
So prosciutto di Parma is sent from heaven, in my opinion. It's one of my favorite things to eat, but it's one of my favorite things to cook. And when I say cook, I mean cooking. A lot of people enjoy prosciutto di Parma wrapped around a fig, around a melon, on a charcuterie board. And you know what? It's spectacular that way. I would never say no to that. But cooking prosciutto is one of my favorite things because it's simple, it's quick, and it completely changes the flavor of the prosciutto. And it's something not a lot of people do. So we're going to cook the prosciutto as well.
And so it's not cooked right now. And how could we tell if it's prosciutto di Parma specifically?
So prosciutto di Parma, I mean, it's very regulated, very controlled. It's a DOP product. So basically, when you get a leg, if you go to like the deli counter and you want to order some prosciutto di Parma, you have to look for the little DOP logo. So the DOP logo, I'm going to do a little close up so everyone can see because it's not important. It's coming around. A little red label. Oh no, the sun is kind of glaring. Anyway, I'll show you on the big paper. That will tell you if it's real prosciutto di Parma. Also, once it's unwrapped, even after it's unpackaged at the store, it has a brand on it. There will be a five-pointed crown, the Parma logo, will be branded right on the skin.
When we go to the deli counter, often it doesn't have like a wrapper on it. So there's a way to tell even if it's at a deli counter.
Yep, so you can see, I'll open this up. I'm going to have to put it away as soon as I open it up because it's going to sweat like crazy from the heat. And I really don't want to lose this baby because she's too delicious. So when there's a lot of rules about prosciutto di Parma here in Canada, and in theory, you shouldn't be able to buy sliced prosciutto di Parma unless it's sliced in Italy and packaged in Italy and has the seal on it. Because the only real way to know if it's Parma is to see the logo that is branded on it, which is right here. Let me expose it. And you can see, try and rotate that so everyone can see. Oh, there it is. So you can kind of see in the corner here.
Yeah, you can
Right
see it.
here, it says Parma.
Okay.
So one of the regulations of prosciutto di Parma is that brand, that branding has to stay on the leg for the entire time that it's sliced. Once that logo is removed, it can no longer be considered prosciutto di Parma.
Really?
Because, yeah, it could be anything. It could be, I can make one in my basement
Right.
and say, this is prosciutto di Parma. I went to Parma last year. I learned how to make prosciutto, so I'm making prosciutto di Parma here.
That's
But
true.
without that brand on it, it's not prosciutto di Parma. Once that's removed, you cannot sell it as prosciutto di Parma anymore. So what the good delis do is that you cut the skin around the logo and just peel it back so it stays attached to the hock for the entire time that it's being sliced.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and again, it's about shopping at reputable places. You know, it's about knowing who your guy at the meat counter is and trusting them a little bit. But if you're unsure, just ask to see the leg. Seriously, just say,
Yeah.
you hold that up for me. You hold it up, you look for that little 5-pointed crown because it's a luxury product and it comes with a luxury price tag.
Right.
So if you're going to spend that money, you want to make sure you're getting the real stuff.
And how do we cook prosciutto di Parma? Are you going to cook it on the grill?
I'm going to cook it on the grill.
Okay. So I like that to me. It would likely cook. It's already cooked. But you're just going to, I guess, crisp it up a little bit.
Yeah, so we're going to grill it just like we did, just like we're going to do with all the other ingredients. We're just going to put it on the grill, slowly cook it, move it around a little bit to get those nice little hash marks, and yeah, and that's it.
Okay.
So I'm going to take this opportunity to tell everybody the keyword because they've just been listening, waiting for that anyway. Everybody's waiting for the coffee machine.
Yeah.
Everyone paying attention? Everybody have a piece of paper? Everyone has a pen? The keyword to win the DeLonghi coffee machine is gelato.
Ooh, good word.
Okay, so now we're going to start our grilling. So, my camera turned off. Yeah, it got too hot, so now my camera turned off.
So we actually got a question.
Sure.
You have to cut should the prosciutto di Parma be cut thicker because it's being cooked? Would you suggest that?
So yes, this is one of the, I don't want to say a problem, but one of the challenges with prosciutto di Parma is that in the delis, it's more often than not cut way too thick. So if you just ask for thin prosciutto di Parma, you'll probably get the right size thickness for grilling.
Okay.
If you ask for thin slices and you want to make your charcuterie board, they're going to be too thick. So you have to tell them to go thinner, to go thinner, to go thinner, to go thinner. If they ask you what number, they say, oh, do you want it on number 1 or number 2 on the meat slicer? It doesn't matter. Those numbers are arbitrary. Every machine is a little bit different. You just say slice it as thin as you possibly can.
Okay.
So,
usually they'll show you. They'll say, is this what you want?
Yeah, they'll hold one up. And the rule of thumb is you want to be able to read a newspaper through it. You should be able to read through a slice of prosciutto di Parma.
Okay.
So when you hold it up to anything, you should be able to see right through it. If you can't see through it, it's too thick.
Okay.
But like I said, this is how thick I cut it because I'm going to grill it. It's a little bit thicker than normal, but you can still read. You can still read through it. You can still see the Eco logo through the prosciutto.
Yeah.
A little thicker than I would put it on a charcuterie board, but it's good for grilling if it's a little bit thicker because it needs it to hold up to the heat.
Okay, so you were saying before about this burger, you don't actually flip it?
You will. I will.
Oh,
once
okay.
it gets there.
You
But
were
like
just,
I said, I'm doing it super, super, super slow.
okay.
And that's
You
kind of the key.
You still
What's
rotate the parchment, like rotate it on the grill?
Yeah, we're going to come over here now, and it's almost ready to do a little rotation. Almost ready. But we're going to go a little handheld here, so it might get a little shaky.
Someone mentioned that your barbecue is so clean. They've never seen a barbecue that clean before.
It is so dirty right now, I was embarrassed. Oh, yeah.
It looks clean.
Well, it's full of like tree pollen and
Oh.
stuff. Yeah.
But
So
the grates are pretty clean.
Yeah, well, I do what I can. It's one of the most important things to keeping your barbecue, working well, is keeping it clean. Don't ever let it get wet. Don't ever let it get wet. And just, scrubbing. We scrub our stoves when we use our stoves. We clean our ovens every now and again. You have to do the same thing with your barbecue. So I'm going to take the prosciutto, and you can see that the hamburger, like my hand is right here. It's not crazy hot. And you don't want it to be crazy hot. No flare-ups yet, no big flames popping out the top, no grease fires going on down in the well of my barbecue. That's how you want it to be. Now, when we start cooking the prosciutto, it's a different story because the fat is going to melt off, and you are going to get a few little flare-ups. Hopefully, not too many. But what I like to do as I'm cooking the prosciutto is I like to move it around. Once the fat starts to melt, I'll just put it right on top of whatever else I'm cooking. So one of these is starting to get nice and soft. You can see the fat is becoming translucent. So we just take that off, and I'm just going to rest it on top of the zucchini so that the fat from the prosciutto kind of leaches off and goes onto the zucchini, and will flavor the zucchini. Now, another ingredient that I didn't get a chance to talk about is rapini. So I just have a little bit of rapini that has been blanched, just in and out of water in about 30 seconds. And we're going to grill that as well.
Wow. So this is like an intense burger. I didn't realize how many toppings there were.
It's like I said, it's meat, starch, veg, all together, all in one dish, so you don't have to mess around with anything else. So our hamburger, I'm going to show you when it's time to start to rotate it. So as it starts to cook from the bottom, you'll start to see this. I don't know if you can see this, but you'll get this it's albumin. It looks like egg whites almost, sort of leaching out of the bottom. Okay. So that's when we know it's time to rotate it. So all I did to rotate it is I just went underneath the parchment paper, and I just rotated it 60 degrees. And we put it back down. And you'll see when we flip it over, you'll still get those nice little grill marks, but you won't have any flare-ups and no burning of the parchment paper.
So you still get the grill marks through the parchment. That's great.
Yeah. So it's, like I said, it's how I do a lot of fish. I do a lot of fish on parchment paper just because it's foolproof that way. There's very small chance that you're going to make a mess and then your fish is going to disintegrate. It's one thing if you're cooking for your family, but when you're doing a catering, everybody wants it perfect. If you're trying to impress someone, you want your fish to be whole and have these beautiful little hash marks. So that's why I always use parchment paper.
And
I'm rotating our zucchini again to 60 degrees.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. What was that, Julie?
They actually sell reusable parchment paper. That's what I use.
Yeah, they have these barbecue mats too. I have a couple underneath here that are like a heavy, basically, like a silt pad that you can put on the barbecue and you can just wipe them down and reuse them. But parchment works just as well. It works really just as well. Yeah,
no, it looks good. I thought for sure it would burn, but I guess because the heat is so low, it's not doing that.
It's the heat is low, and it's like because the meat is in contact with the parchment paper, it won't ignite. It doesn't get hot enough to reach the flash point of the actual parchment paper. And it's just like, I don't know if you ever watch those survivalist guys who like boil water over a campfire in a plastic bottle to sterilize it. It's the same sort of thing. It doesn't get hot enough to actually melt the plastic, and this doesn't get hot enough to ignite the parchment paper. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next ingredient while that is cooking. How's my time? 15 minutes. Oh, boy. I've been talking too much. Sorry, everyone. So
we're learning a lot.
Our next ingredient is going to be some pecorino toscano. So pecorino toscano is a wonderful, wonderful cheese, and a lot of people are scared, I find, by pecorino, by sheep's milk cheeses. I don't understand why. sheep's milk cheeses are wonderful, and when they're young, like this one is, it doesn't have that super, goaty, sheepy kind of flavor that everybody expects it.
Okay.
So, do you eat a lot of pecorino, Julie?
I do. It's
You
one
do?
of my favorite cheeses.
Thank you. But do you find a lot of people are turned off by it? Like, do you
Yes.
get a lot of people who...
As soon actually as I put it on like a cheese board,
Yeah.
it's like there's those few people who will be like, oh, I smell goat cheese. I want goat cheese.
I know. Well, that's
There's
why
always
we're here
one.
today, Julie, is to educate people and let them know how beautiful this product can be. So, when it comes to sheep's milk cheeses, I mean, Pecorino Toscano, it's been around since the 1400s. They know what they're doing. They know how to make good cheese. So from the region of Tuscany, the sheeps are very specific. The feed is very specific. Again, the consortium controls all of the steps of the process. So when you're buying Pecorino Toscano, as long as it has that, again, that DOP logo on it, then you know that you're getting the real stuff. Now, Pecorino Toscano is aged a lot less than a lot of other cheeses. So here in Canada, we're lucky that we get both. We get the fresh and we get the old one. So for this instance, I'm using the fresh one because it is a lot milder in flavor. Not to say that it doesn't have flavor. It's not fior di latte. It does have, some good flavor to it. But the big advantage is that it melts really well. Melts very well.
And what about if someone wants to use an alternate type of cheese alternative? What would you suggest?
Well, I mean, anything that melts well. Like I love Montasio cheese, so I will often put Montasio if I don't have Pecorino. I'm using Pecorino with this burger because there's a lot of flavor going on.
Okay.
A lot going on, so we needed a heavier cheese. But yeah, like a nice Montasio works really, really well. I mean, if you want to be Canadian about it, I mean, there's nothing wrong with throwing a slice of cheddar on here. Not at all. Even a slice of like a real mozzarella, not buffalo mozzarella, but a real fresh mozzarella would work well.
Okay.
But this one is just for this dish because you have the bitterness of the rapini, you have the the saltiness of the prosciutto di Parma, you have the meat, the pork, the veal, the coffee. We have the andouille, which we haven't spoken about yet. There's a lot of flavor going on. So the cheese needs to sort of, hold court with all of those other flavors. So I am going to, my prosciutto is done, so I have to take my prosciutto off. I'll use this one. So the rapini has already come off because it only needs a couple minutes to get some nice hash marks on it. And then the prosciutto, I'll show you, when it comes off, when it's grilled, it has this like an orangey sort of color to it. And it is completely, oh yeah, the light is kind of bad. But it's very, very orange, but it's crispy. Like when you break it, it'll just break into little shards.
Okay, so it'll be
Absolutely delicious on its own.
so it'll be a crunchy texture on your burger.
Absolutely. It's kind of, when you do it right, it's like having really well cooked bacon. It has a salty element, it has big flavors, and it has that crisp, that crunch to it. And that's one thing that I always try and teach young cooks and home cooks about is try and think about texture. Texture is a very important part of food. We, with all of our senses, and we like our palates themselves like having a little bit of crunch. We like it when we bite into a salad and there's a little bit of crunch. It sort of wakes up your taste buds.
We actually got a very good question about the Pecorino Toscano.
Yep.
So how does it differentiate from other pecorino cheeses like Romano?
So Pecorino Romano and Pecorino Toscano, they're both made with sheep's milk. They're both pasteurized sheep's milk. The Pecorino Toscano, the sheep are different breed. The feed is a little bit different. And so the cheese itself tends to be a lot softer, not only in texture, but also in flavor. It's a lot less sheepy than Romano. Not that there's anything wrong with Romano. I'm using it next week or the week after. I'm cooking with Romano. It's wonderful cheese, but Romano tends to be a little bit saltier, a little bit harder.
Okay.
Now, that's when it comes to this fresco that I'm using. So this is the fresh Pecorino Toscano. So this is only aged. I mean, generally it's about 4 months when it's released. So it is a pretty young cheese. Now, when you do get into the more aged ones, then yes, they will get harder, more gradable, and much more strongly flavored. But the fresh stuff is just awesome, awesome, awesome for like instances like this where you want a little bit of richness in your dish, but you don't want to go full sheet.
And a lot of the attendees are mentioning that your lid is left open. Is this something you typically do, or would you suggest to close the lid of the barbecue?
Almost always I cook with my lid open.
Okay.
And that's just from being a restaurant chef. Like, we work over top of grills all day long, and you don't have lids on your grills in a professional restaurant. So I've just gotten used to cooking unidirectional from the heat underneath. The only time I do do close the lid is, like I said, if I'm doing a turkey or a roast, or it's raining, or my dog, I'm afraid he's going to jump up and snatch a burger off the grill. But other than that, I always cook with the lid open because I can just turn and look. And I know it's okay. Because generally when I'm cooking, I'm doing 500 things at once.
Right.
So I can just glance over, and now I can see that the hamburger is ready to flip. So to flip the hamburger, all we're going to do is, like I said, I'm just taking it off of the grill. I'm going to flip it over here on the cutting board so you can see. So I just took it off, and one of the magical things about parchment paper is that it cools down instantly. Like, the second it comes off of the barbecue, you can touch it with your fingers. It's crazy.
Oh.
So now that our burger is ready to flip, we just take it, go underneath, and flip it over right onto the parchment paper. And now the raw side is down, and we put it back onto the barbecue.
It already seems like it has such a nice crust on it, even the side that flipped it on.
Yeah, and a big part of that is from the coffee, because when the coffee goes on top of the hamburger, it will absorb any like moisture that's happening on the outside of the hamburger, which leads to that nice Maillard effect. And like I said, the Maillard effect is ideal when it is dry. So we want it to stay dry. The whatchamacallit, the hamburger meat just sears a lot better when it's dry.
Okay.
Okay.
So now what are we doing?
So now we're going to start assembling.
We got all the toppings ready. There was one topping that we didn't talk about.
I'm getting to it.
Okay.
The good one. The one that your dad's waiting for. Maybe your dad can do this one.
It's from Calabria. That's why.
So this is a wonderful, wonderful ingredient, Nduja. Now, for those of you who don't know what Nduja is, you should get to know Nduja. It is basically a pork sausage puree, pate. Like, it's pork meat, like you make a sausage, with 10 times as much fat as you would make a salumi out of. So it can be up to 50% fat. And then it's just, mushed up so that it becomes spreadable. And it's like spicy and porky and fatty and absolutely delicious. If you like spicy things, this is your jam.
I've actually had that on pizza. But
Oh,
never
yeah.
on a burger.
Oh man, I was hard to find one of these jars that was not opened in my house, because I have a few different varieties, a few different producers, and I use it all the time. It's a wonderful, wonderful ingredient. So we have the Nduja, we have our bun, which is here. Did I cut it the right size? And so with the focaccia, I'm using a focaccia bun again because great flavor, nice and soft, but I find focaccia to be way too fat. Like, a lot of times, it's just too tall. Like, look at that. Like, it's as big as my head. So what I usually do is I will just cut out the middle section and snack on that as I'm making my hamburger, or use it for crackers or whatever, just so that you have a better bun to meat ratio.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the size of the bun, on how big the focaccia is. But yeah, generally I cut out the middle piece just to get, that's nice. Just to get, like I said, the ratio nice. So we take our bun and we take our nduja. So nduja in Canada, it's hard. It's very, very difficult to find the actual DOP nduja. So this is an nduja, but it's not the DOP one because, like I said, it's very, very difficult to find. So we just take it and we just smear it on. No ketchup, no relish, no tomatoes. None of that is needed because we have a ton of flavor and some nice bit of spice with the nduja. Next, we take our piece of cheese. Our burger is almost done. Oh yeah, I lied. This is when I close the lid. I close the lid now so that it'll get nice and hot in there and it'll melt the cheese on top of the hamburger.
So you put the cheese on top of the burger right now?
Yeah, I just put the cheese on top of the burger. I close the lid so that it gets some nice heat and it'll melt the cheese nicely while I assemble the rest of the hamburger. So our bun goes down. We take our little pieces of grilled zucchini and I'm just going to do 2 slices. We're going to be nice and generous, make it nice and vegetable-y. So that goes on. We have our little bits of rapini. So we're going to put our rapini on. And I'm going to alternate the heads and the tails so that you can get a lot on here. And the prosciutto we're going to put on right at the end. So we're going to check our hamburger.
I love this because you don't have to make any side dishes. You've got everything right in there.
That's the whole idea. It's a complete meal that you can hold in your hand.
Right. It's
hold
perfect.
in one hand while you have, Aperol Spritz in the other hand.
Yeah.
That's the idea. You get me, Julie. Okay,
this would even be good with a good beer too.
That's
a good Italian beer.
That's true, especially on a hot day like today. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm just waiting for the cheese to melt. So I have about a minute left for the cheese to melt. So are there any questions? Anything?
Well, one question about the parchment. So someone was saying, I already kind of know the answer, but maybe we'll just let you explain. Should you cut it to each individual burger, or should you, like, if you have like 3, can you make a sheet big enough and put them all on it? Like, what do you suggest?
It's better to cut them to the individual burger size. Doesn't have to be like the perfect round. Like you saw, mine was just square.
Right.
Just so that it's easier to move. Because that way you're just rotating the parchment paper. If you have like a big sheet on top of your barbecue and you're rotating the individual burgers, what happens is it might catch on the parchment paper and then the parchment paper kind of twists and it messes up your other ones too.
Right.
So it's just as easy when you're making the hamburgers. You just have some pieces of parchment cut, throw them on. You can stack them one on top of each other when you put them inside the fridge overnight.
Right.
And then you just take them out and cook.
That's true. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm seeing any other questions.
Okay, well, I'm going to put the burger on, even though it could go another minute just for the cheese to finish melting. But we're running out of time. And I promised everyone that I would be on time this year.
You're good at that on that side. There's no more questions.
Okay.
Let's
so now our hamburger comes off. And we drop it on our bun. Wow, that didn't shrink at all. That's nice.
I know. I was going to say that burger is bigger than the bun. That never happens.
It is. But you know what? I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no.
I like having the first few bites to be all meat. So now for the crunchy element, we have our prosciutto di Parma that has been grilled. And we just top this on. And I'm going to go kind of heavy on this because it's delicious. Oh, yeah, but I forgot to show you. The hamburger is flat. Like, remember how I did the little dent?
Yeah.
If you look at it, it's completely flat now.
Yeah, because you made that divot in the beginning.
Yep. So it actually works. So
I had faith.
prosciutto goes. What's that?
I had faith in you.
Good, because I wasn't sure it was gonna work. So thank you. So yeah, I cut my bun a little too small, but you guys get the idea. So when you're all done, yes, it's a tall hamburger. It's a big, tall hamburger that needs a little bit of compression. Like just put your palm on top of it, squish it down.
You
It'll
definitely
all be
need
good.
2 hands for that one.
What's that?
You definitely need 2 hands for that one.
Yeah, well, until you get halfway done. Once you've beaten it halfway, then it becomes a one-hander. So it takes a little bit of work to do this. You know, like you start the burger the day before. The prosciutto, the zucchini, the rapini, really it cooks in the same amount of time, a lot less time actually than the actual patty. But you'll notice that there was never a flare up on my barbecue. There's not one time where a flame shot up. And the hamburger, like I said, it didn't shrink a ton. It shrunk a little bit. I'd say it shrunk about 3/4 of an inch. But it didn't shrink, to a quarter of its size, like happens all too often. And that, like I said, is as much a part, or probably more about the temperature than it is about the mixture of the meat and everything else that went in there.
Well, thank you so much, Chef. That was such a great recipe. I can't wait to try that one.
I hope you do.
I'm gonna get my grocery list together and go out and find all those amazing ingredients. So I just want to remind everyone who's watching today to email the email address in the chat to the secret word that you mentioned earlier, and they can have a chance to win that beautiful DeLonghi espresso maker. Look how pretty that is. That's like a retro type machine.
I know.
So make sure.
I think we're ineligible, aren't we? Too bad. That's an awesome.
I know.
That is a killer machine.
It totally sucks, but I'll pass it back to Tiziana just so we could end off the class. Thank you so much, Chef Roberto. This has been so much fun.
Thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you, Julie, for joining us. Thank you, Eric, for joining and following the class. That looks an amazing burger. Great, Roberto. I think we're going to celebrate a great Father's Day with that burger, everybody.
Yes.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Julie, again, for your participation. And, we look forward to having you back again to some of our events and initiatives in the future. And obviously, a special thank you to our sponsor, DeLonghi, for this class. We're going to have DeLonghi back on June 29th. And thank you, finally, to all my colleagues at Eco Canada, in particular Astrid Durzo, Ilaria Venoso, Monica Gambarota, Richard Bressan, and Mary Kiriko. There is a big team behind the scenes, so it's that makes everything possible. Happy Father's Day to everybody. Grazie mille e buona serata.